data set and is set in a very rich Indian culture. And furthermore, there are also a lack of prior research on how Indian cultural-specific words in the English literary text are translated into Vietnamese. So I have come to the research aim to analyze the translation procedure used by the translated Nguyễn for cultural-specific word in the Vietnamese version of the novels Slumdog Millionaire, and I will be using Newmark 1988 17 procedure framework. So my research questions is what translation procedures will apply to translating cultural-specific word from the English novels Slumdog Millionaire into Vietnamese. And moving on to my literary review. So many scholars have defined translation as Newmark in 1988 defined it as rendering the meaning of a text into another language in the way the author intends. And I've decided to use this definition on the theoretical foundation of the study, as it emphasizes meaning preservation and context accuracy, which is crucial when translating cultural-specific words. And for translation procedure, there is many frameworks introduced by many scholars, but I also decided to use Newmark 1988 17 clearly defined micro-level procedure. The reason is because it's specially designed for literary translation and cultural terms, as there are many procedures like transference, descriptive equivalent, or cultural equivalent, which is very useful when used to translate cultural-specific words. And also, it's offering brilliant focus on both linguistic form and cultural meaning. And furthermore, it's also helped to categorize the procedure by its function, so it allows me for a detailed comparison between the short text and the target text. And lastly, it is a practical case-by-case analysis of how the cultural-specific word is not dominant were translated. So the reason that I decided to do my research on cultural-specific word translation, because according to Newmark, it lacks of equivalence, cultural gap, and the language may be figurative. So this can highlight the importance of context-sensitive procedure like transferring, cultural equivalent, or descriptive equivalent, depending also on the translation aim when translating. So after a review of many related studies, I've come to the cultural gap, in which most of the language pairs chosen were English Arabic or English to Indonesian, so there is a lack of focus on English to Vietnamese study. And furthermore, the journal that most are focused on are fantasy, allegory, true, or text, within the Indian cultural context being translated into Vietnamese. So this study of mine will address that gap by examining how culture-specific work in Slumdog Millionaire, a realist novel rich in Indian cultural references, are translated into Vietnamese. Now moving on to my methodology, the research approach I use is mixed research approach, which is mainly qualitative, and the main method will be document analysis. I will focus on translation of culture-specific work in literary translation study. The short text will be the English novel Slumdog Millionaire by Baker Swallow, and the target text will be by the translator, translated by Nguyễn Bích Lan. The scope will be all 12 chapters, including the prologue and the epilogue. So there will be 40 narrative sections in total, and 120 cultural-specific work will be manually identified by me. So for the data collection step, first I will obtain the short text and the target text from the officially published group, and then format and segment both of the text to manually identify the cultural-specific word along with their context in the book. Then the cultural-specific word will be classified using Newmark 17 procedure, and then all of them will be organized into a data set for better analysis. So qualitative will be used to examine the translation patterns and the procedure selection by the translator, and quantitative will be used to track the frequency of each procedure. So the outcome is a clear understanding of how and why specific procedures were used to express the cultural meaning in the novel. So moving on to my final discussion. So I have identified a total of 120 culture-specific words and come to two analytical views, which is first, the application of procedure is independently account for a total of 120 were often embedded in past couplet, and all of them account for a total of 141.
Right, so you have used New York framework with 70 different procedures. Can you give me some examples of descriptive equivalent or functional equivalent in any of the experience in economics you have?
In my novel or in other novel?
Any other novel?
Any other novel. So I have stayed in the literary field. So for functional equivalence, as I have found in the novel things are in Vietnamese translation with and that by Chino. So the translation of tower fire in a sentence and the old-time village of Yufuya, a tower fire with his origin as every man will be presented tomorrow morning, is have been translated into Người Mỏ. So by using the translation Người Mỏ, the translation have maintained the function of the function role of the original term. In truth, it's the person that go out and like hold everybody up without confusing on the literary or not using the exact equivalent. And for the others example, for descriptive equivalent, I have also found in the novel that in which the word bầu in the translation có được phần Việt Nam trở vào hiệp hoi là hôm nay vài bầu rượu kêu hàng xóm lạnh rượu này have been translated from the word in any money case way, and it's seldom immediately born right of palm wine for right is neighbor and made merry. So from right to bow, it describes the traditional container that used to store wine, and in the way that Vietnamese reader can still understand and recognize the word, even though it's not the literal match.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. It is so nice to read a paper on one of my favorite novels. So that is also the reason why it triggers my sense of curiosity. I was reading your paper about culture-specific concept translations in this novel. And because I'm so curious, so when I read the findings, especially the analysis of your results, I thought something a bit confusing and inconsistent in the way you analyze the translation features. So now let's open page 30 and 33 for the two vivid illustrations of translation procedures identified here. As you also described in the slide, so please back to the slide on the findings with examples on
I wanted to focus as the focus of mine will be the explanation of molecule that have been added in here for better understanding for the reader. So I understand that they are important, but descriptive equivalent is also important. So when I break it down, I want to hear it.
Because if it is only one single illustration, it's okay, totally fine. But because there are so many different examples that illustrate this point. So when you are analyzing the procedures, you discuss in a more detailed manner of the difference between the two type of objects.
Okay, I think I just want to have some clarification on findings and the way you analyze the data. So first of all, how do you deal with overlapping types of procedures? Because if you look at cultural equivalence and modulation, and sometimes they overlap. So how do you overcome that in your research?
Yes, indeed. As I have mentioned in the limitation, so this research is conducted by only one researcher, which is me. So sometimes the results can be come out kind of subjective and might be related to my understanding, my knowledge only. So I try my best to base the work on its context and the function of the procedure that we use to evaluate the result. So yes, perhaps the result might come out subjective.
Okay. So another thing, so if I look at your findings, the percentage and the numbers, so in one instance when we have this, which constitutes temperance and descriptive equivalence. So in one instance, do we count just one bucket or do we count the all three procedures?
So in my research, I count all of those as the one couplet. Then perhaps in future research, as I have suggested, I can also divide the couplet into different types. For example, couplet including transferred or descriptive equivalence can be counted at one time, and couplet for example, transferred or functional equivalent can be counted at another time, and that will provide a more detailed insight into the study.
This can be problematic. Imagine if descriptive equivalence happen again and again, but they always in the couplet. And in the way of interpretation and analysis, it means there's no descriptive equivalent at all, and all of them are couplet. So you would come with the findings that no descriptive equivalent was involved. But actually, can be many incidents involve descriptive equivalence. You see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I see. So yes, that also my concern when identify and analyze the data, as most of the descriptive equivalents were indeed in couplet. So for the train, I will be more detailed in the finding discussion that the descriptive equivalent are often embedded in the couplet, not as an individual procedure.
Okay, so you need to add that in data analysis section as well. The way you analyze and interpret the data. And one suggestion, maybe you just remove the couplets, you just count all the procedures, leave the couplets, right? Leave the nouns, and you say like among all of the instances, how many times the couplets were implied, or say the procedure were implied together. Alright, so that would be more easy to understand. Yeah. And one last thing. So how did you identify the CSW